Hello, people. It's me, Warwick again. You know, the person that's like really annoyingly altruistic. I sometimes be careful. I get too altruistic. Sometimes I tilt my head back at 15 degrees, like I'm looking down my nose at people. I don't mean to do that. As altruistic as I am, I like to think that I'm quite genuine in my altruism and like always kind of trying to spread good beliefs. Um, Subject of this post is actually I normally don't make political posts, or then they are political. They're kind of indirectly political, but this is a little bit about kind of military aggressiveness of some countries that I think I want to put kind of some views forward on. But it's also kind of based on some beliefs. I've got some notes up here, just kind of help me talk. Basically, I believe that we are our beliefs and that we are sentient beings. And the definition of the word sentient, as you know, is self awareness. But you know, I believe there are varying degrees of self awareness and varying degrees of sentientness. Um, I want to address a subject of self knowledge, or how well a person knows themselves. And an observation I've noticed in the world, which is I'm sure you'll agree with, that people that don't know themselves very well tend to be the easiest people to manipulate. Um, and because the definition of the word sentient is self-aware, it's also to correct that it's also correct to say that how well a person knows themselves is also is a part of being a sentient. So I would say there's varying degrees of sentientness. What I'm saying is, if a person is easy to manipulate because they don't know themselves very well, then they're not really sentient. They're like very intelligent animals, basically. And I know that might sound a bit harsh, what I'm saying, and understand that I'm saying it in the context of trying to encourage people to know themselves. I don't really want people to be intelligent animals that are easy to manipulate into doing things, and easy to manipulate by politics and that kind of stuff. So no, I think the nature of the enemy, or the nature of evil, is insidious. And the definition of the word insidious means it's an adjective which describes a process which is slow, subtle, but with harmful effects. And there's lots of like techniques that people use in power to manipulate people. And you know, there's certain things which kind of enhance this. Like, for example, there's some things which people are unaware of, and that is subliminal violation, like violating a person's mind. Now, I get that you might think to myself, hang about, this guy should be wearing maybe a tinfoil hat. Yeah, I get that. But those of you that are pretty well educated and understand the basic kind of rules of Psych 101 will understand that this is actually true. The power of the mind is quite a powerful thing. And subliminal violation is actually much more common than people might think. I'm not going to tell you about the techniques of subliminal violation because I think it's bad and it's dangerous knowledge. But I'm here to give you the counter to subliminal violation, to how to resist it. And the knowledge I'm giving you isn't dangerous. It can never be used for anything dangerous, and it's a very very simple belief. As you know, a lot of my previous posts I talked about how a person's beliefs and a person's nature go hand in hand. Well, that is the counter to the belief of all forms of manipulation, subliminal or otherwise. It's that simple. Um, just if people just make the connection between their beliefs and their nature and their will, make the connection between the beliefs of everyone and the type of world we live in. This is an extremely powerful belief, and you know, no matter how slow, or if a person doesn't know themselves very well, but they've got a good heart, if they take on correct beliefs, and their beliefs are consistent, and their faith in those beliefs is very very strong, then even if you're not the most aware person, then you know it'll make a real difference to the world and the type of person you are. You know, another type of manipulation you get in corrupt countries, believe it or not, is a lot to do with the food we eat, like GM food, like genetically modified organisms. The government actually, this I believe very strongly that the government actually make the organic food expensive, because organic food has a high yield of amino acids and a lower yield of starch. Starch actually is like a neuroinhibitor that makes people a bit docile and easy to control. And of course, we've got fluoride in the water as well. So the rich people can afford the food which is high in amino acids, and they can afford the bottled water or those expensive filters on the taps. But the poor people have to eat food which make them a bit docile and retarded. But the thing is, I think, you know, even with these little subliminal advantages they had and stuff in the food, correct beliefs can counter even these things as well. But it's very important to have very strong faith in your beliefs. Now, another philosophy I'm going to state is the only good control is self-control. And self-control and beliefs and faith are actually quite important because, as an example, for beliefs to actually have a real effect in making the world a better place, your faith has to be very, very strong. Because the faith of people that are, that promote capitalism, their faith is extremely strong, stronger than you can imagine. And this is probably one of the reasons why I admire the Muslim religion as well, because their faith is very, very strong. Well, I don't believe in all their beliefs, but I respect them for sticking to their guns. Now, I'll give you an example of how strong your faith has to be to make the world a better place. If I say something really common, like, for example, most people believe that it's wrong to be possessive over your spouse, yeah? And you shouldn't be possessive over women, or you're a woman with a man, or whatever. Shouldn't be possessive. Yet, this say, for example, I believe that you shouldn't be possessive over your spouse. I don't have a spouse, unfortunately. But if I did, I wouldn't be possessive. I might have the attitude whereby, how dare you have nookie with my girlfriend and not let me watch? I'll probably be that type. But that's neither here nor there. That's me digressing a bit. But the point is, if someone has, say, for example, you believe this, and then you catch your spouse having an affair with your brother, okay, and you fall out with your brother out of it, and you've got to ask yourself, if you've fallen out of your brother, isn't that an act of being possessive over your spouse? Now, I'm recording some on my new phone, my Samsung Galaxy A5 2017 model. Now, I quite like my phone. I work as an Android programmer in my spare time as a hobby. I program, but you can actually steal my phone, and the prerequisite to stealing something is you have to first own it. Okay, so if you stole my phone, I might fall out with you. And I'm a bit possessive over my phone, but being possessive. But the thing is, with your spouse, a spouse is a human being, so you can't actually own a spouse. Therefore, you can't steal a spouse. So if you've got to have self-control. This is why I said the only good control is self-control. So if you're in an emotionally unbalanced state, because your spouse has had an affair with your brother or your best friend or whatever the situation may be, or if you're a woman, but you know what I'm saying. But your faith has to be so strong that you have to not fall out with that person, and you have to say to yourself, you know what, they weren't raped. I'm hurt emotionally. The person I love in my life is gone, but you have to have so much self-control that you're not emotionally unbalanced, and you stick to your beliefs no matter what. And say, you know what, it's wrong to be possessive over a woman. Therefore, it's wrong to fall out with my brother or best friend or whatever over entertaining my spouse or whatever. So this is an example of the strength of your faith. Your faith has to be strong. I could give another example. If I personally believe that the justice system should be a place not of punishment, but to correct people so that you realise the error of their ways. It should be a place where people can be corrected and do their time and come out as a productive, contributing member to society. But you need to, if you believe that, that's great. But is your faith so strong that if someone killed a beloved one in your family, and you're emotionally imbalanced, and you say, "Oh yeah, I used to believe that, but it's different. This guy that killed my brother or sister, is evil," So your faith has to be so strong that, and your self-control has to be so good that you can separate your emotional anguish and agony from what's happened, and separate that from your sense of logic and your sense of beliefs and faith in your correct beliefs. And you have to say to myself, that person that killed my loved one, do you know what? I want the same for him in prison. I want that person to serve his time, learn the errors of his way, and come out as a contributing member of society. And if that truly happened, then to me, justice is done. This is how strong your faith has to be. And this is another example of how people get manipulated. A little example, in England, there's a tax called the council tax, which used to be called the poll tax, and it replaced a tax called rates, for example. Without going into details, if you live in the States or in a country where you're not aware of English politics, basically, property owners benefit from the poll tax. People who don't own property don't benefit from it. And I've seen many people that they don't have a property, and they think, the council tax is a terrible idea. 10 years later, they get on a property ladder, they own a home, and all of a sudden they think the council tax is a great thing. You might get fair weather communists. Oh yeah, I think communism is great. And then one day they become a millionaire, and all of a sudden, you know what? Communism's a load of rubbish. Yeah, and now I'm better than other people because I've got more money. I can see capitalism's really a good idea. So it's really important. Otherwise you can have the correct beliefs, but unless your faith is strong, it won't work. You have to have very, very strong beliefs. So I'm going to end this post with want to explain about correct beliefs, and I want to just like leave you with a belief which I think will help lead the world to a better place, and this is to do with military aggression. Um, I believe that when people join the army, and they think it's a noble thing. They put their life on the line for what they believe is right. But also remember, when you join the army, you're not just putting your life on the line for what you believe is right. You're also agreeing to take human life in the name of the ideology which is embodied by the country of whatever army you're joining. This is also true as well. And I think it's good to acknowledge this. But a really good belief that everyone, I think, should take on, especially people in the United States, is that if your government invades another country, so if you join the army and as a soldier, if your government says, leave the cartographic boundaries of your land and go to another land uninvited, you should take on the belief that this is wrong, this is an invasion. Yeah, and then you come out with the excuse, oh, well, regime change. And those guys, they behead people for being gay. They circumcise women and make them wear those veils. You should invade them. That you should take on the belief that's no excuse. I don't like the idea of people beheading people for being gay in these regimes, but that's no excuse to invade another country. There's lots of things in our society that are very, very bad, and they're right to point out how bad they are, but you don't see them invading our country, do you? They don't like our regime. You don't see them invading our country. All right, yeah, we've had some Islamic terrorists in our country, but that's because we're invading their countries. That's because we're invading them first, you see. So you have to remember that. And so what I'm saying to everyone, I want you, when I close this post, I want everyone to take on the belief and say to themselves, if I serve, if I'm the type of person, I would probably I would never join the English army or the American army, because I know that if I join the army, they will ask me to leave the land, go to another country, uninvited, and take human life. I'm not going to do that. That's wrong. You have to have a sense of right and wrong here. I'm teaching you something which is very logic, very common sense, and as far as I'm concerned, there is no argument against it. Yeah, and I would join the Russian army, and the reason why I joined the Russian army is because ever since 1922, it's been illegal for any leader to ask a soldier to encroach on another territory without being invited. The Russians are not militarily aggressive. The Americans are always lying about them and making them out to be militarily aggressive, but they're not. So I would join the Russian army before I join the English army, because I know that Putin will not ask me to go to another land uninvited. I'm quite happy give my life protecting the king and country, and to make sure no one invades my territory. As soon as my leader says go to that country and kill those guys, I'm going to say no, that's wrong. So in closing this, is when it says to all to take on, I want to encourage you to take on this belief, take on the belief it's wrong. Yeah, I don't care about regime change. I don't care about preemptive strikes or this country does that, or look at history. No excuses. Or you can look through and they might start using history as an excuse. There's two different sides of the history. You've got the Russian side of you and the American side of you, which are very different. Let's not worry about which side of the story is true. Yeah, because history is just being used to use excuses to continue the senseless cycle of retaliation. And the cycle of retaliation, let's bury the hatchet. Let's forget about the cycle of retaliation. Let's forget if the American side of the story is true about Russians doing this, the Russians doing that. Let's forget about that. Forget about the past. We don't know which side of the story is true. I don't know what side. Yeah, all right, yeah, fair enough. I believe the Ruskies. But there's a big difference between believing and knowing. I don't know the Rusky side is true, but just believe it. And, you might make it, oh, yeah, you know that the American side is true, but you don't know that. You believe it. If you want to believe that, I don't mind. I don't hold that against you. But what's important is let's forget about what side of the story is true. Let's look at the here and now. Let's make an ethos. And let's say, everyone, take on the belief, if I join the army, I'll join the army in the condition that I'm not going to invade another country. Let everyone take on that belief, and then the world will become a much better, much more peaceful place. Ideally, the best belief is no one to have an army or big weapons of mass destruction. But for the purpose of transition towards that world, we need to take on this belief. I want everyone that's watched this video to put up a comment when I put it on YouTube. I want people to make comments and say, yeah, that's true. It's wrong to invade another country. I don't care what the excuse is. Yeah, I mean, if I really got into it, and there's another discussion, there's lots of things. Like, for example, you talk about forcing a girl to wear a veil in a Muslim country. You might think that's bad. But if let's look on the Western side of the story, which is probably just as bad. We brainwash our little girls to associate their sense of self-worth with their appearance so much that they grow up not being able to go out to the shops in the afternoon as an adult without their makeup on. That's just as bad. That's just as bad, man. You start looking at it. If you start looking at our regime, there's lots of really bad things in our regime, and they don't invade us. So let's take on this belief, okay? Let's take on this belief. Everyone watching it, please, I want you to put a comment. I want you to share this video with other people, because I only spread beliefs here which make the world a better place. I spread beliefs that are very correct, very common sense. Worlds will create a better place, and I'm here to try and make the connection between beliefs and nature, and the beliefs of the collective, and the nature of the world. And if you spread this belief successfully for me and for yourselves, no one's going to ever invade a country ever again, because it is common sense what I'm teaching you. So I'm going to close now and say thank you very much for listening to this video, and I say goodbye and God bless.